I too think that the nugget that was really newsworthy out of this was about NAFTA. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like what we're looking at here, he must have spent 2 or 3 times as much time talking about broadband in rural communities as he did about trade with Mexico and Canada. And I think that was what most of those people in those audience were sitting there to hear, what he had to say about NAFTA. This is a president who has threatened to pull out of NAFTA, said it's a terrible deal. I mean, that is something he has said over and over. Nothing like that in this speech. And as I say, he has been listening to Senator Pat Roberts of Kansas, Joni Ernst of Iowa, who have been arguing and counseling him not to go too far in pulling out of NAFTA. This suggests to me, Melissa, that perhaps that is not going to happen. I mean, this is a very politically interesting and significant speech.
Yeah. Ned, what do you think?
No, I think Danny hit it right on the head. That part about NAFTA, instead of pulling out, we're going to try and get the best deal for American workers. I mean, that's a significant shift from his campaign rhetoric, but I think he hit the right tone the whole way. He went out there, he sold the tax plan. I thought one of the more interesting parts was, you know, not one Democrat voted for that tax bill. 2018 is where rubber hits the road, and if we continue to see jobs go up, if we see potentially multiple quarters of 4% GDP, a market that might hit 26,000 points, we see wages go up, we see jobs increase. I'm kind of curious as to what Democrats are actually going to run on in 2018. So he was right to hit that point. Again, it was great for him to emphasize, you know, the reforms on the estate tax, the death tax, and also to emphasize that these guys get to do 100% deduction in year 1 on their equipment. So yeah. I think he hit the right tone. It was extremely disciplined, which I loved. He didn't take time to go after the book. He didn't take time to go after the media. He stuck to the script. He sold his plans, and then he talked about the future, and I thought it was an excellent speech.
Yeah. Guy Benson, what's your take on that? I mean, he didn't do anything on the book or the media or blah, 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 any of that.
Yep.
I mean, stuck to selling points and then also made news on these other issues.
Right, because I'm sitting here and I'm listening, and whenever he goes off script and ad-libs, and he did it a few times, I'm bracing to see what's he going to say, because there's a lot of people in the media who are waiting to latch on to something that might be newsworthy that they can blow up and turn their attention to that. Well, except they're not covering it.
They're talking about the book and other gossip on all the other channels. They're not actually covering this policy speech. But yes, go ahead. I understand your point.
If he mentions the book, or if he mentions Oprah Winfrey or something, that then becomes a giant headline that all the talking heads are discussing. He didn't do that. He did not bait them. He didn't take the bait. He didn't bait them in response. And instead, he stuck to mostly the script. Huge applause line on the death tax. I know we were told by liberals that's not going to affect many farmers. It sounds like the farmers in that room disagreed. And then really taking the fight rhetorically to Democrats, saying every single member of Congress with a Democrat, a D next to their name, all of them voted against this bill that helps small businesses and companies and gives a tax cut to 80% of American families. They all voted no. What happens if they win? What happens to your tax relief? What happens to deregulation? What happens to the Second Amendment? He stuck that in there as well. That's the type of rhetorical ammo that I think every conservative is happy to hear the president deploying.
Liz Peek, there may have been differences on NAFTA and some other things, but he did a gut punch there with the flag and the American national anthem. There is something about rural America that issues like that a lot of folks in the cities and the suburbs don't get, they get immediately. When he referenced, he didn't even have to mention the NFL or even the word football, but it's clear where he was going with that. That really roused the crowd.
Yeah, farm country is God's country. I mean, that really is the message. He gets what these people are about. It is, I think someone mentioned earlier, it's 46 million Americans constitute rural America. This is not an insignificant part of the country. And I thought what we came out of here, folks, was the campaign for 2018. If you vote in the Democrats, they are going to raise your taxes again. If you vote in Democrats, they are going to reimpose all these regulations that I have rolled back. And I think that's pretty powerful stuff.
Don't you think, Dan, that really affects the farmers' life more than anything else? The fact that they could immediately see a deregulation policy that affects their land right now.
Yeah, I think, and Trump mentioned that. He said the immediate expensing, 100% expensing, he think is the sleeper in the tax bill. He could be right about that. Certainly that's going to be true for farmers who are going to expense investments in equipment. And it will be interesting to see how much more they pour into their land, to their equipment, and it should benefit the farm communities.
Yeah, Ned, final thought on that. What did he miss in this speech? What could he have gotten to in terms of policy? I mean, he touched on immigration. He talked in broad strokes. We were listening for sort of some hints about what's coming. He didn't really do that.
No, I mean, he spent, what, I think 1 or 2 lines on immigration, in-chain migration, in the lottery system, build a wall. Really didn't talk about 2018, but that's fine with me, Melissa, because I'm very realistic about what 2018 looks like. You have midterms, you have many members of Congress that any political courage they might have had in 2017 is going to evaporate in 2018. So I think he was right to talk about all the successes he's had, talk about what the future looks like in regards to what he can actually do. And the thing that I hope that he'll continue to do is to continue to roll back the regulatory state where it is in his powers as the executive to get some wins in 2018. So I wasn't that surprised about it. Love the tone, love the discipline. He hit all the right points. Great speech.
And he did get a lot of points on that from the crowd. You heard them cheering on that. And the estate tax, again, things that people say that's for the rich. No one cares about that. Here we have middle America. We have farmers cheering for these things that they know because they look at their bottom line in their pocketbook, what it's really all about. Anyway, thanks to all of you. Appreciate it.